and we will go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this, really timely and important conversation. My name is Jane Ruby, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Chicago. And just before we get started, a little bit about the League if you're not familiar with our work. But the League of Women Voters of Chicago is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy and education. Our league encourages informed and active participation in government while influencing public policy. We never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates, but we are political, which is an important distinction that we make. Nonpartisan does not mean neutral in politics. We sort of operate in two different roles, the voter service side and citizen education, and then also the action and advocacy. And we like to do sort of both in-person and virtual events. So this is kind of this is sort of part two of an event that we hosted earlier in the year. It was an in-person one. Times have rapidly changed since the last time we hosted one of these, and we felt in anticipation of the No Kings rally that is happening this upcoming Saturday, October 18th. It was time for sort of a refresher on both on the sort of immigration side and also on the protest side. And we were thrilled that our speaker from the last one that we hosted was also available to come and talk with us today. So with that, I will introduce our speaker. Wesam Shahed is a first-generation Palestinian American from Chicago, Illinois. He serves as the Senior Legislative Counsel of the Illinois Attorney General's Office. He's not speaking in this official capacity. He is speaking as himself and someone who is very knowledgeable on the topic for tonight. Previously, he was a prosecutor and policy advisor with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, the second largest in the U.S. He was named among the Arab American Foundation's 30 Under 30, and he recently gave a TED Talk on criminal justice reform. Does justice always require a conviction? He also served as finance director for the first Muslim and Palestinian American elected to the Illinois House Legislature in 2023 and has held executive roles with the ACLU of Illinois, the Arab American Bar Association, the Muslim Bar Association, the Arab Business Professional Association, and the AB Korkor, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Mental Health Foundation. And he is also a very good friend of mine. And with that, I will turn it over to Wesam.
Okay, well, first things first, what a pleasure it is to be with you all. Wish it was under better circumstances, right? In knowing what's happening in our country today, in light of the current presidential administration and the weaponization of ICE against our community. My name is Wesam Shahed, and I am an attorney, government attorney, as Jane had discussed, and one of my main focuses as policy advisor was protecting the First Amendment right, where I helped dismiss close to 400 First Amendment right cases for just peaceful protesting, right? So as Jane had talked about, we wanted to break up this session very similar to what we did last time. And I know there was a lot of notes taken in the last session. And how I usually do my Know Your Rights conversations is I break it up into three different parts. So as you are note taking, you can divide. Okay, so what I was just saying is we break up this conversation into three different parts for the sake of your note taking. Is the first part is pre-protesting. So as you're leading up to protesting, how do you prepare yourself both with the legal mindset and let's call it the street smarts? The second part will be broken up into live. You're in the middle of the protests happening right then and there, and the steps that you could be taking to protect yourself, your friends, or your family, or an individual who you're just protesting alongside. And the third part is you've been arrested, right? You've been arrested at that point and taken by the police. And I will do some distinguishing points for individuals in this conversation today when it comes to ICE, right? In particular. So we'll be distinguishing, when an ICE agent were to take you or come to your home or a place of work versus just a regular police officer. And I'll make those distinguishing points. And after I'm done with these, We do a Q&A session. Love to answer any questions, go into the weeds on stuff. But I'll be focusing very much on macro. And I'm happy to take all questions at the end. And feel free to chime in if there's something urgent. But okay, so let's start with the pre-protesting. So you're essentially, let's use the No Kings protest coming up. Okay, so we have the date, the time, the location. You know what's coming. How do you best prepare? Okay, so first things first, a lot of people often bring a group of friends, bring a group of family, bring whatever may be the case, and you're texting, right? You're texting, and specifically in the organizer space, I do not recommend whatsoever using iMessage or WhatsApp in particular. WhatsApp is compromised. There's been tons of news articles. You can easily Google it. When it comes to data leaks and data hackers, what my recommendation is using the app called Signal. For those of you who don't know, Signal, kind of like it's spelled Signal. That's what the app is called. That is a encrypted service and very rock solid safe. So if you're in the organizing space, I recommend you downloading the app and using the Signal app. Now, the second thing, okay, before you walk into that protest, a lot of people, whether you have an iPhone or an Android, have enabled Face ID. So basically, for those of you who don't know what that's called, you basically look at your cell phone and boom, and it unlocks, right? It's a very quick and easy way for people to get into yourself to get into your own phone. So if you're going to a protest, disable that. Use a password coded. So technically, a police officer, if you are detained and they were to take away your cell phone and just pass by your face with your cell phone, right? And it unlocks, they don't need probable cause or get a warrant essentially to get inside of this thing, right? So they can just come in. So a passcode though, they're going to need a warrant to get in to your phone. So it makes things much more complicated. Now, where are we to protest as citizens? Now, there's two distinguishing points to be made here. Okay, when we're talking about date, time, location, is a public space. That is where your First Amendment right is totally protected. Okay, so some examples are parks, run by the city or county or state, streets, sidewalks. These types of areas are completely fair game to be protesting. Now, the famous question I always get, right, is private property. So like pretend, for instance, companies that are complicit in some sort of bad behavior that people are protesting actively against. Now that becomes a different story all entirely, is you might be protesting at your own peril, right? I'm not telling you, and I want to be very clear here, disclaimer for the rest of the entire conversation. I'm not here to tell you what to do or in terms of choosing what to do with your own body. That's going to be everyone's own individual choice. I'm just here to give you kind of like the disclaimers of decisions and what type of consequences may occur, right? Kind of like in the legal world, we say the fine print, right? In the TV shows and movies, what you see. So now if you go into a private property, you may be charged with a misdemeanor called criminal trespass to property. This is a class C misdemeanor to class B, depending, and is punishable up to 30 days in jail. Now, it doesn't mean you're automatically getting the maximum sentence. However, it can be a possibility if you were arrested on private property. Okay, so now, I want to talk about one other component as you're leading up to the protest is making sure you have an attorney, okay, on standby. And what does this mean? Someone who, if an event were to occur that you were, taken and you were arrested, that your friends and family and your attorney knows where you're going. So I called this the prep response system. So basically, if you know you're headed to a protest and things might get really serious, is telling close your significant other, siblings, parents, close family, friends, you just name it, whatever you like, whoever is your person in life, flagging it for them, letting them know the location. That way, you have that checking system. And when it comes to an attorney, I'm not here to scare everyone. Oh my God, everyone has to have a attorney on retainer. If you choose to do that, that's a smart idea. But at the bare minimum, what I would recommend is if you are organizers in this, in this Zoom call today, is calling NLG, which is the National Lawyers Guild. So these attorneys act as, for free, by the way, as attorney observers. Okay, so they're legal observers at protests. They literally, their job is to physically stand there and just watch the protests ensue. And basically, if a police incident were to occur, they run up right then and there to the incident and immediately say, I'm this person's attorney, I represent them. So if you are planning a protest, I would highly recommend you call NLG. Chicago is one of their largest chapters. Now, I also recommend when we talk about having the attorney, your cell phone, your belongings are going to be taken by the police or ICE agents. If you were to be taken, so something I do recommend doing, honestly, like myself right now, here, I'm buttoning my sleeves, rolling it up, is on your arm with marker. Literally, there's no other possible way to do this. Is marker, write your NLG attorney's number, your attorney's number, and I'm gonna take a quick moment to give everyone on this chat today the NLG hotline. Okay, so this is a number you can call. Now, this is if you were taken and you got the opportunity to take the police and you wanted to make, one of those famous phone calls, right, that you get to your attorney. So I want everyone to write this number down. I'm going to repeat it twice, and I'm happy to, talk about it during the Q&A session. So the phone number, and I'm going to go really slow, is 872. Again, it's 872 4 NLG, which stands for National Lawyers Guild. CHI, standing for Chicago, CHI. Again, the phone number is 872 4 NLG CHI, CHI, Chicago. Okay? So that's the phone number. You could literally write it on your arm. So just in case if something were to happen, boom, you have it right then and there. You don't need your cell phone. You can make the call where you're taken. Now, something else, something in a protest like the No Kings or something, anticipating, you're expecting tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people plus, right? Is you have that system that I talked about, not only you letting folks know where you're going, but I always recommend in a protest that you have someone come with you to the protest at minimum, someone close to you, just in case if an incident were to occur, right? So bringing a family, friend, colleague, whoever may be the case, water, snacks, make sure you bring ID, cash, just in case an emergency happens and you lose your wallet. And for some folks, they're nervous about their identity, being revealed. As you all know, many protests within the past couple years at minimum, there have been drones flying around that have been like getting up close to people's faces when it comes to facial recognition. That is a real thing. I mean, you have every right to wear a mask. I want to be that very clear. When you're protesting, you can wear technically whatever you want, right? But yeah, just making sure that you have these types of materials on you, whether it's in a backpack or something on you, water, snacks, ID, cash, whatever may be the case. That way you're staying hydrated, and because when it comes to big protesting sessions, you might not be able to escape the crowd quickly. There has been a protest that I was at literally this past summer where someone literally passed out in the middle of the crowd. And they were literally had to lift the person and kind of crowd surf to them to get them out of the protest because of just how many people were there, right? Just to get them to an ambulance where it was. So it's just a distinguishing point when it comes to ICE now. So this is for the regular protests. Now, when it comes to, leading up to an ICE altercation. So, what I recommend, if you know someone, whether they're on this Zoom call or when it comes to just someone in your life, family, friend, colleague, whatever may be the case, that may be a target of ICE, what I recommend to them is that they have an immigration attorney on retainer already now, like they should have had it yesterday. And that attorney should walk them through the necessary steps of pre-planning just in case if ICE were to come to their home, their place of work, place of worship, whatever may be the case. You've seen ICE now at hospitals, at prisons, at workplaces, they're going everywhere, right? is to have this system in place where they also write their attorney's number on them, that they also should have all their documentation on them. Okay, so if they are on a green card visa, if they have a visa status, if they have paperwork, right, they should be carrying that on them 24/7. There was a famous case, a Palestinian protester, Mahmoud Khalil. He was able, as he was detained and taken by ICE, you see in the video, present the papers because he had known that they were targeting him, right? Having those papers in place will make things much easier on that individual's life. So yeah, just having that system in place, flagging for a neighbor, close family, friend, whatever may be a significant other that you may be targeted by ICE, and that they have that preparation plan that we had talked about in place otherwise. Okay, so otherwise, leading up to an ICE approachment by an agent. Okay, so something critical. That's the difference between, a regular police case where you see on the TV shows, it's called probable cause, where they can come in without a warrant. Now, something with an ICE agent to take a individual, what they need is called a judicial warrant. Judicial warrants. Okay, some warrants that they present are called, they're signed by an immigration officer. Okay, that is not legally binding. A judicial warrant is signed by a judge. So that means if I'll just be frank, if a judicial warrant is signed, by a judge and for an individual's detainment by ICE, I'm just going to be frank, that person's going into custody. There's no way if or about that is a legal documentation that that person is to be arrested and detained by ICE at that point. So these are kind of the different nuances here when you're pre-planning, making sure you have that preparation plan in place, making sure that you're talking to your friends and family, taking those small technological steps, right, that really can make a massive difference. Once, if or we want to be prepared if a situation like that were to occur. So now I want to go into the second phase of our conversation. You are live in the middle of the protest. The protest is happening. The people are around you. Or in the other case, when we talk about ICE, you're physically confronting ICE in this moment. An ICE agent is coming to take you or a friend in this moment. So let's talk about there's two differences, okay, with the ICE component and immigration court versus criminal court, right? And what this looks like. So let's start with the criminal side, and we can again use the No Kings protest as an example or a protest similar to that. So when a police officer approaches you, okay, uh, and they're asking you questions immediately, you can ask the question, am I being detained? Right? And if the answer is no by the officer, you have every right to walk away. Yeah, they can't stop you, right? If they're saying yes, right, now you are physically being detained, you can ask why, right? You can ask exactly why you're being detained, under what crime or suspicion they have you under. Okay, so making that very clear, nuanced point. So another aspect, a very famous question we get, especially now in the 21st century, and especially in the light of the murder of George Floyd, okay, is recording police officers. Okay, so let's be very clear here. Under the United States Supreme Court, recording a police officer in general is completely legal. Okay. How, and I know there's big controversy. Some police officers say, no, it's not legal and this and that. Now, it is legal. However, you cannot interfere with an officer's course of action. What does this mean? So a famous example that often people mistake for is like you take your physical camera, like if an officer is trying to bring someone in and you're like blocking an officer with your camera. Okay, that's not going to fly. I'm just going to be really frank here. Is if you are physically in the between an officer who is effectuating their arrest and you're trying to like record in between the two physical human bodies, you are obstructing and an officer's arrest. And, if your phone gets knocked away or whatever may be the case, that's not really on the officer at that point. However, now what I recommend is a safe distance from the officer because, listen, your friend, colleague, family member, whatever may be the case, okay, people have this, understand, arguably misconception that like physically getting close is like supportive. Okay, already this physical confrontation is occurring. Uh, an officer, and not taking sides, in this moment, it becomes much more aggressive the more people get into this. So you're actually putting that person in even more danger, right? So having that physical safe distance, similar to the murder of George Floyd, where the young woman who had recorded George's unfortunate and tragic murder, she was in that safe distance away from him, right? And was able to capture the whole thing without interruption from her end, right? So that's what I would recommend is having a safe distance, okay? And now, if an officer just randomly walks up to you, apparently this has happened to folks, and says, "I want to search your bag," right? Okay, they need to have some sort of probable cause on you of like what type of crime that you, and going back to that question, am I being detained? Am I being arrested? Right? You can ask these types of critical questions. Okay, if the question is that you are being detained or you are being arrested, immediately I recommend you exercise your right to remain silent. Some folks, there's a guilty conscience that activates with some folks, and they say, "Oh my God, I didn't do it," or "It was this person," or this or that. This stop, stop. Sometimes your guilty, accidental, good intentions actually end up backfiring on you. So exercise your right to remain silent. Exercise your right. You want to speak to an attorney, and just zip it, right? And when it comes to the backpack component, right, you can say out loud that I do not consent to this search. Now, whether the officer is going to do it, possibly violate your rights, that'll be a later conversation that your attorney will duke out in court. However, make sure that's all caught, because officers do have body worn camera that is mandated in the state of Illinois, and with Chicago police specifically. So yes, so making sure that you're exercising all those rights verbally and out loud. Now, here comes something that has been happening to our community and to our protesters, as you've all been seeing in the past, recent attacks with the ICE raids, pepper spray, tear gas. So let's talk about these things. Okay, so when it comes to pepper spray and tear gas, excuse me, do not rub your eyes. Everyone's instincts immediately is to start rubbing. Okay, that makes it 10 times worse. Okay, remember I talked about being prepared with that kit? Okay, water. Water is critical. Flush out with water, not milk. Okay, people think it's hot sauce. That makes it worse. Okay, blinking rapidly, right? Our eyes and our human body is very good at, exercising, this excess, this bad chemical material, but making sure you're flushing. Get out of there immediately, by the way. Some folks were telling me if they're pouring water in the middle of the tear gas, get out, get someone to get you to safety immediately. But honestly, record any interactions that you're having with these types of officers when it comes to these moments. Okay, so now we're gonna divert now to the ICE component, right? An ICE officer has arrived at your home, your place of worship, wherever it may be. The ICE officer is essentially coming to take you. And please pass around these resources to individuals that you know may be targeted. Okay, so you do not have the same rights as an individual when you have them in criminal court, right? Technically, you don't have a right to an attorney under immigration. Maybe you saw that very famous video that went viral, like a 6-year-old young child. That he had a headset on, he only spoke Spanish, and the judge was literally asking him, "Do you even understand what I'm saying?" Right? It's tragic. Don't even get me started about all this. But you can get an attorney, right? And in terms of that, what I will say, right, for we talked about the judicial warrant and the ICE agent taking you, making sure you have these paperwork in place. Okay, do my recommendation, right, when it comes to an ICE agent, if they're trying to effectuate your arrest, okay, and detainment at this point, okay, you have a decision to make. Okay, I'm not going to tell you do not do this or yes do this. People have their own decisions of what to do with their own physical body, and I'm not going to stop that. However, I am going to give the disclaimer. Now, if you choose to resist an ICE officer, there might be a new federal charge, a criminal charge that never existed under, like, this is immigration court. This has nothing to do with the criminal court, that you could be charged with resisting an officer, what they call a peace officer, right? And that could be a criminal charge, right? So I'm just flagging that for folks to understand that. Again, not telling you whether to do it or not. That's your decision. My job is to give you the macro. If you make this decision, this may happen. If you make this decision, this may happen, right? So otherwise, we talked about what would it look like with the ICE component leading up, knowing that this may happen. When an ICE officer were to come and take you or family or friend, you could still record those interactions. You've seen those videos going viral and things like that. Make sure you're recording it. And you can talk to the officer, ask them where they're taking them. They should be able to provide that information. But that's where the attorney comes in, right? That you already had that attorney, the immigration attorney. Now we're talking about for the ICE component on standby and on retainer. Okay, and that information is important. Make sure you share that immigration attorney's information with your friends and family and colleagues, essentially your emergency prep plan folks, right? Whoever's in that contingency. Don't hide information, about your the attorney with just yourself, right? You want to be able to share that just in case if a moment were to occur. Now, let's talk about protesting now. So we're in the final stage. Okay, we're in the final stage. You've been arrested. Okay, let's go back to the protest. This is the criminal side of things. So you've now been arrested. The police are taking you into custody. Again, we talk about this. Exercise your right to remain silent. Exercise your right to speak to an attorney. Don't say a word until they come. Okay. And you may get a public defender. Maybe your NLG attorney is going to be there with you. Maybe they ride with you and meet you at the courthouse, whatever it may be. Maybe they meet you at the police station. Okay. Something very famous that occurs, and often people don't understand. You do not need to sign a thing presented by a police officer. They're going to have you sign stuff. Nope. You don't have to sign a single thing until your attorney walks through that door, okay, and says, yes, so and so, it is okay for you to sign such document, okay? If you are injured, so, if a physical altercation did occur with one of the police officers and you are injured, literally, if it's literally a nice or a little small scab, right, and blood is coming out of your hand, right, to, whatever may be it, a broken bone, a bruise, whatever may be the case, whatever type of injury, if you are injured, you can tell the police officers that you are requesting medical attention. Okay, you have that right. Okay, and the police, should be attending to your medical care beforehand. Some people think, if they're bleeding or injured or whatever, they have to suck it up. That is so incorrect. You do not have to do that. Please don't do that. If you are injured, tell the police officers, again, with that body worn camera, that you are requesting medical attention. And by law, they have to provide that medical attention to you. Okay, so I want to give you some examples of some charges that may occur if you are in fact arrested. Again, this is still on the criminal side before we talk about ICE and immigration. Okay, so these are some common types of charges a protester may face. Okay, so examples is, and it depends on the misdemeanor level to the felony level. So it's called disorderly conduct. This is a class C misdemeanor, a class C. So basically, this is a broad charge. You're causing a ruckus, essentially, right? Disorderly conduct, and the police can arrest you, right? Unlawful assembly, trespassing, what we talked about with that private property. Technically, you can trespass onto state property as well. It depends on the circumstances. Let's say a courthouse, right? And someone's in the middle of a trial and you start erupting and protesting in the middle of a jury trial, right? Things like this. But the more famous ones, right, is, as everyone knows here, whether it's on the news, TV shows, and movies, it's called resisting arrest, resisting a police officer, a peace officer. Each state calls it different things. But yes, in Illinois, this is a very serious misdemeanor. It's a class A, punishable up to 364 days in jail. There's even a higher level of it. It's called aggravated battery to a police officer. This is a felony. Now this is a game changer, right? This is something serious. You've seriously injured a police officer, or I'm not saying you, but like in the case that occurred. But yeah, I mean, there really is some common tactics that may lead to this type of stuff. So some folks have learned about this in these recent protests, especially in the past 2 years of the constant protesting, is some folks are undercover agitators. Okay, they're going to walk up to you and you're not going to know them, right? And there's a peaceful protester, or peaceful protest going on, and some of them are going to ask you about plans. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with the police officers? And they're going to try to escalate violence. Do not listen to those agitators. Sometimes they're undercover. Sometimes these are insiders from across the country. They're plants. Do not engage in that illegal activity, right? Now, if a police officer blocks your exit, right, you can ask very calmly, say, am I free to leave? Right? And if they say yes, you're able to walk past them. Okay. If they say no, now you can invoke your right to remain silent, the attorney, if you're being detained and things like this. Now, if you're live streaming, a lot of folks do this live streaming with the recording. Just make sure you have a backup of that recording, just in case something happens to your phone and it scuffles. People break phones all the time. Um, so another famous thing when it comes to live streaming and recording things, okay? After your release, I want you to be really intentional about this, okay? If you have a case now, right, you've gone through the court system, and maybe even others, right, who are going through the court system now, is, you have to be really intentional, right? And especially in your own case, to stick to general updates, not specifics, because some specifics could really backfire in your case and others' cases, right? So a lot of people, for instance, go on social media and like this on a Zoom call, and they're constantly talking about what happened, right? And things like that. That type of stuff can be used against you in court, right? To be really intentional. So just be really mindful of that type of stuff, and really stay close to your attorney. Now, on the immigration side of things, and this will be the final component, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. So, in immigration court, right, having that retained attorney is critical because, again, you don't have that right to an attorney. So, making sure that attorney knows where you are, working with the emergency prep. Okay. Again, the same advice follows. Do not sign anything without an attorney present, right? You have every right to make sure that your attorney can come in and being able to speak to them, and you could know once you have an attorney and retainer and they've spoken up for you, judges, they won't bypass attorneys, and the other side of the fence also, I would say at least 9.5 out of 10 times they never bypass attorneys. So making sure that's in place as well, making sure the right documentation is there. And at that point, what I will say when it comes to the criminal and immigration side, I'm going to stop here. This is where I usually draw the line, because something famous, I don't want to give out this type of specific legal advice, because now it's really going to be up to your public defender, your NLG attorney, your criminal defense attorney, or in the immigration side, your immigration attorney, on the next steps of what to do. For instance, if I told you to go left on this call and you end up getting arrested for XYZ, and your attorney wants to go right, right? And you guys are like, well, we Sam told us to do XYZ. No, right? Your attorney is the shepherd of your case. They are the most expert when it comes to your individual case, and you should listen to them really intimately. So otherwise, this is kind of the broad macro, right? The three phases. We're leading up to a protest slash an ICE interaction. How do we prep for it? We're live is the second phase. We're in the midst of it. It's happening right here, right now. And finally, the third, you're in the court system, essentially, the beginnings of that court system, the beginning of the interrogation system as well. So at this time, I want to take any questions, comments, concerns. Feel free to chime in.
Listen, let me start. There are a couple questions that are, not everybody on the call is from Chicago. Can you think through what you said and tell us what might be different if you're in the burbs, Aurora or something, starting with the phone number to call?
You can still call that NLG line, right? And you can ask them. Some NLG attorneys live out in these suburbs themselves. So again, remember these NLG attorneys are, they're attorneys that live all over the place. Yes, some of them live in Chicago, some of them live in the burbs. So basically, wherever they live, and even if they live in Chicago, if there's a protest I see in the chat happening in Aurora and other suburbs that they might be willing to drive for, right? So don't worry about that. Call NLG's hotline, right? And speak to them. Say, hey, we have a protest happening in Aurora, as an example. Okay. And they'll figure it out, right? That's their job. Any other questions? I heard someone chime in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hi. I'm an 84-year-old woman and I walk with a cane. I'm planning to go to the No Kings rally on Saturday. And I think it's supposed to be rainy, so I'm planning to wear a backpack and a poncho over that. And I'm planning to go by myself.
Mhm.
But it sounds as if as if I should call this legal place just so that I know about it. And I wasn't planning to stay for the whole time because I don't think I could stand for 2 hours. I just wanted my body to be there to show that I support this. But I've never been arrested at any of the protests I've ever gone to. So can't I just do what I usually do? I sort of go and I stand and I look like a little old lady with my cane and 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 sort of smile at anybody, and after about an hour or so, then I leave.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this type of know your rights is this session that, Jane and Catherine in the league put on today is, about protecting yourself, right? And knowing what you're going into, how to best prepare for these types of situations. Yes, obviously, if you don't plan on any type of confrontations, and as you said, just literally physically just standing there, yes, you could do the same old, same old. Today's, conversation is just to make you prepared, right? For any of these types of situations we had talked about. And for friends or family, and even if you're going by yourself, I mean, it seems like, people like Jane on this call or Catherine would be more than happy to be, I don't speak on their behalf or someone in the league as your old members, to be your, partner in that moment and the accountability partner if you need someone as support. So just, it's always a good thing, whether or not, police confrontations or not, or ICE confrontations, just to let someone know that you're headed to this protest and, for safety reasons, just standing by someone and being with someone. I would recommend that, no matter who, what, where, what, and how.
And we will
Yeah,
gather.
thank you.
Yeah, we will gather. Check your email. The newsletter will have a lot of information that has to do with all of where we're going to meet up, and yeah, so that we're all together.
Mhm.
We got a great question here that we're all wondering about,
Okay, here.
and that is once you see someone arrested, you see something happen, you have the recording. What's the best thing to do with it?
Yeah, so I'm not going to give advice on, like, it says here, where's the best place to post on a specific site. I'm not going to give that. If what I will go back to is what I was saying, right? If you do see someone being arrested, taking out your phone and recording is completely legal, right? As long as you're not obstructing the officer and, like, literally physically getting in between the person being arrested and the arresting officer, right? And in terms of posting it, people post it on social media, and there's tons of social media channels there that end up going viral. I mean, that's what happened with the murder of George Floyd. It was posted on social media. Now, if you choose to live stream it, I mean, it's no different than recording. Obviously, the recording ends and it's not posted onto the mainstream. A live stream is a live stream. It's happening right then and there live for the world to watch. So, that's your prerogative, what you choose to do. Um, I do see, regarding what to do with the recording, can we, Sam, comment on what we should or should not post? The Illinois AG has asked us that the video be submitted to its office. ACLU also wants any video. Yeah, so in terms of, where to send the video, what I would recommend, right, if you have, some sort, and now I'm going to get really legal here, some sort of evidence, right, to the contrary of what's been happening, in terms of what one narrative is, by all means, I would recommend, obviously the ACLU, the AG's office, whatever may be the case, the AG's office does investigate, police misconduct, but so does the state's attorney's office. You're gonna have to find out, which prosecuting agency is prosecuting that case, and it's all case by case basis. But more of the story here, the best person to get that video to is the defense attorney. Okay, is the defense attorney. Get that video to the defense attorney. Okay, by all means. Now, if this police officer has like a series and a consistency of police misconduct, that's a whole different can of worms to open up, where the Illinois Attorney General's office or possibly the Cook County State's Attorney's office would file that investigation and look into that. Another office to look into, it's called COPA, and now, with all respect, sorry to the suburb folks, the COPA doesn't exist in the suburbs. This is the, police accountability office that was opened by the city of Chicago, right? That you can file a COPA report and take a look at that. They refer that type of investigation to the Cook County State's Attorney's office, and that's who would end up prosecuting that case. When it comes to the suburbs or slash the rest of Illinois, you can refer that to the Illinois Attorney General's office under the constituent services, and you could take a look at that. But however, again, I would like to reiterate, we're kind of getting too much into the weeds about like police misconduct and like a series. The best person, if you have this type of recording and contrary evidence to get to, is the defense attorney, whether it's the public defender, the NLG attorney, or the criminal defense attorney on retainment. Again, the good news is you would have met with this attorney or your family friend or whoever may be, that they would have that contact information for the attorney. Okay, and Brian's talking about in the context of ICE when he was making that comment. Thank you for that clarification, Brian. But do the immigrants being taken have a defense attorney? So that attorney, remember we talked about in the pre-planning, so critical that you have that attorney and retainer. Like right now, as of yesterday, you should have had that. Because no, unlike the criminal justice system, where someone is indigent, meaning they cannot afford an attorney, there's that famous Miranda moment that you've all heard of, that if you can't afford an attorney will be essentially given to you, right? In the immigration world, it doesn't matter if you're indigent or not, right? There's no government attorney that can come in for you, right, and be an attorney, given to you, unlike a criminal case. So that's why having that attorney on retainer is so critical. So if and when that event were to occur, that your family, friends, yourself, right, writing that attorney's number, whatever all the resources we already talked about, right, having that attorney be flagged the moment it happens, and they're ready to go and they're moving to the courthouse immediately. In the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian student who was taken, you can literally hear him telling his wife, he did this planning, to contact the attorney. He was saying in Arabic to his wife, right? So that's a prime example, right, of having that attorney on retainer and exercising that moment right then and there, right? So making sure that's apparent. Yes. Any other question?
So let me ask, just for probably maybe less clarification and maybe degree of difference is more what I'm talking about. So if your status in this country is questionable, and now everything's questionable if you're not an actual citizen, definitely you want to have that attorney on hand. If
Mhm.
you are a protester and you're going down, you could have an attorney, but you could also just rely on the emergency phone number. Is that kind
Yeah,
of what
yeah,
we're
yeah. For
talking?
criminal, yeah. Now we're talking about the criminal. So you've been arrested at a protest. So there's three technically options. One of them,
Okay.
you've already retained a private criminal defense attorney. Maybe you see
Mhm,
them on the TV shows, movies, and local folks, right? The
mhm,
second one, if you are indigent, that you can't afford a criminal defense attorney, a public defender would be afforded to you in the court of law, right? The third option, yes, if if you were fortunate enough that you prepped, you wrote the number down, you called, but you're at the protest and people flag an NLG attorney, an observer there, and the attorney runs up to the situation, you'll see the attorney's trained. They will stop the interaction immediately, say, I represent, in this
mhm.
case, so and so. They will cut that moment. Boom, that's over. You don't need any
Okay.
attorney, right? And now arguably, that attorney, the NLG attorney, what they often do, some of them take the case to the very end, but oftentimes they'll pass it along to the public defender, or that person chooses, hey, I want a private defense attorney at a different
Mhm.
stage, and that cord is severed. So it's very situational. That's what I would say.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. How do you recognize an NLG attorney at a protest? That's an excellent question. Okay, so literally they'll have sometimes vests. It just depends on the protest and the chapter. Literally, it'll say National Lawyers Guild, NLG. Some of them will have materials. Honestly, if you just see a bunch of people in suits standing, literally, and they have sunglasses on, hats on, they'll have different things. You can kind of imagine that they're NLG attorneys. They're literally watching the protest. They're literally like eyeing. And they're often separated. They're usually not in groups. So if you think just random people in suits are just lining up, usually they do have some sort of memorabilia on, saying NLG, a vest, just something that flags for them that they are an attorney. So it depends on the chapter. Each one of them have their own rules and code of conduct of dress apparel. Some of them like not to actually show that they're NLG attorneys, right? For safety reasons, they talk about that, but also for police officers. So when they walk up, they're able, not to be caught off guard or caught the police off guard. So it really all depends. Man, everyone's been so engaged. I have lots of questions. I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, we really answered that 10 questions. I love it in the comments. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, we have a hand raise, Catherine, from Miss Abigail.
Oh, go ahead.
I heard Wesam when he spoke before to the league. And I have to say, I didn't do some of the things he told me to do. And I just want to alert everybody, watch out, get it done.
Yeah.
It's so good to hear you a second time. Thank you.
Abigail, that means the world. And, I hope nothing major happened. But listen, these types of conversation points, we don't do it for cute talking points, right? And we do this for really, to protect our people. So they have the full protection to exercise their First Amendment right safely, right? And they're able to do it in the first place. And that's the critical part here is everyone on this call. I always say it's literally called the First Amendment. That right came first out of the Bill of Rights, right? This is the most proud and loud and most passionate right that we have as American citizens.
Oh,
So
gosh.
being able to do this safely, and it's so sad, right, to be frank, that under today and this administration, that this most basic and critical human right of our country is being threatened in this manner. But people like Jane and Catherine and the rest of the league putting on this call and making sure that our people are educated to being able to exercise this safely, we'll do what we need to do on our end, right? They're going to try to suppress and make sure that we're not able to exercise this right against them when they're trying to do these oppressive tactics. However, we're educated. We have people on staff, myself, the NOG folks, will make sure that everyone is protected and being able to exercise this.
Let's take a moment because the league, we're an organization, we're a group, and there are a couple others here who are representing groups. So let's think, as a group, I can imagine a few things, making sure that we have some pieces of paper with these phone numbers. I mean, do you see anything that we should do as the league or the other groups that are here?
Yeah, what I would recommend is after this call is like the leadership team gets together. What I would suggest to these organizations, and I saw tons of people taking notes on this call. So like debrief the notes. And someone suggested the NLG one pager as an example is creating information materials for your organization, right? As you already sent out, you talked with some of the folks that you all are meeting at a certain place and time for the No Kings rally, right? And having that information emailed ahead of time and prepared for the protesters who will be joining the league at that moment, so they're best prepared, right? Before the protesting begins, like, hey, did everyone, we're all set with the attorney? Does everyone have the marker? Backpack, water, snack? Are we all set to go? And then move, right, as a unit. There comes immense power with preparation, and that you move as a united front in that way. Just in case if the worst case scenario would happen, you're prepared, and it's not truly the worst case scenario because you were already prepared. So yeah, that's what I would recommend to the leadership team here and any other type of organizations like this. Similar to a comment that was just made earlier, some people might lose certain aspects of the talk just for whatever reason. They might forget it or not execute on it when the day comes. So having the leaders making sure they're mindful of making sure all their members are taken care of and protected.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So I do realize it is 7 o'clock. So I'll end my portion here. I know Catherine and Jane probably close us out or whatever they have planned.
Thank you so much for this. Wesam is a very close friend of mine, and I really appreciate him not just doing this once, but twice. For our members and the general public on this, it is such good information. And I just want to sort of echo the idea that information is power. And hopefully none of us have to ever sort of use the tools that we've been given tonight, or in any sort of other know your rights situations, but to have that information on hand not only helps protect ourselves, but also protect those around us. It's friends, family, neighbors, larger community. It's all of us when we're sort of at these big events. To have this information is incredibly powerful when there is a lot of mis and disinformation out there, when there's a lot of people who are trying to sort of gaslight how much we actually know as citizens, and sort of try to compress our power as people. So thank you to everyone who's joined the call. I will put my email in the chat if anyone has any sort of follow-ups for me, and or if anyone would like to join our efforts at the No Kings rally this Saturday, October 18th. We have some really exciting stuff for League of Women Voters of Chicago in terms of participating in this. And also, if anyone wants to follow up with Wesam, please also email me and I can, connect you.
Well, I just want to,
Yay.
it's such a pleasure being here with you all, and be safe while you're out there, and love and appreciate you all, and we'll see you out on the streets.